I have one
Yeah.
last question, and then I'm
Right.
going to let you go.
Right.
In the last like 20 years, I've seen a lot of training implements become trendy. You see like
Hmm.
medicine balls, like picking them up and slamming them on the ground, tires,
Yeah.
low tires, these ropes and stuff that people love to
Yep.
use. And then you see kettlebells, right? And
Yep.
all of it has one common denominator. They're like super badass things to do. I used to get these Russian bags where you like sling them around and stuff. Like those are
Oh yeah,
really
we got some of
popular.
those things. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so here's my question. Are kettlebells just like dumbbells but more badass, or are they superior in some way? You're one of the martial artists that I know who not only did martial arts a lot when they were growing up, but also got off into fitness. And you have
Hmm.
your school. I don't know if it's primarily a fitness gym, but you have a pretty big fitness component to it.
It's like a 50. So the gym is its own entity, I guess. And then the martial arts schools, so they're separate. But I do incorporate a lot of the fitness stuff into the martial arts. So like my students are getting it whether they know they're getting it or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think there's a real synergy between fitness and martial arts. Of
Yeah.
course, um, you can be able to defend yourself without being super fit, but I think it's like
Hmm.
um, if you're a mechanic, your fitness is your tool. You're only going to be so good as you are fit.
Yep.
I in basically every martial art I've ever studied, people who are really good athletes excel at sparring of all kinds. Even the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Hmm.
for example, they kind of took this
Right.
line that, it's all about technique, and even someone who's small can beat someone who's big. But let me tell you, it's not true. Like it's true at the low level for like white belts and blue belts and stuff. But when you starting to get up to
Hmm.
higher ranks, like if you're jacked and super ripped and you're also skilled, it's really difficult to beat that person. And the same thing is true
Yeah.
with striking. You get somebody who's got like a really long leg and is super fast and super strong, and you're trying to beat them as someone who's a lot smaller and a lot weaker, it's going to be very difficult for you. So I think
Yeah.
fitness is really important. It's something that's not talked about enough. Fitness and
Yeah.
mental ferocity, but we're not going to really talk about that today, but is also super important, like your
I
mental
think
state.
I think those two are like intertwined personally. I
To
mean,
be
if
honest.
you're doing like the appropriate fitness training, it should have an aspect of mental toughness to it. I
Mhm.
mean, it's like an old saying, like if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, right? So
Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing with martial arts. Like if you just kind of like peter along through all this stuff,
yeah.
you're not really going to get a whole lot out of it.
I agree.
So
So
yeah,
anyway, I see there's a lot of synergy between these things, and so I had some
yeah.
questions for you as kind of an expert in the area of fitness. Um, what are some of your best exercises you feel like for developing core strength?
Um, so if we'll just go kind of a couple different routes with this because
Okay.
it depends on, I guess, the access to equipment that people have. Um, I think once I finish my little thesis that I have to do for my fourth degree in Hapkido, I will gladly share it with you, and it can help give you some more insight because that's actually I'm doing this whole topic right now. The benefits of more specifically, like we do hard style kettlebell training, which is very akin to martial arts training. So like learning to get that relaxed to tense
Mhm.
movements, so like tensing at the right time, relaxing the right muscles, things like that.
Mhm.
So like the how you do it is just as important, which we won't really have time to cover today, but we'll just kind of talk about like no equipment exercises. Probably some of the best things for core strength that you could do would be just like that. If you ever see like a hollow position, like a gymnast holds, like when they're on the gymnastics rings, they're kind of, I would say like squeezing their ribs and their hips together. You can practice that on the ground. So if anyone wanted to look up like after watching this, like hollow rocks or hollow holds are really good for just building overall abdominal strength.
Mhm.
Um, as far as like specific to martial arts, my favorite thing is Turkish get ups. And I actually did you ever meet Coach Ray? Ray Lilly. He lives in Texas now, so he's a character, for sure. We had to be careful what students we would
Was this
live around.
or somewhere else? This guy.
He kind of came around after Scott a little bit. Ian had worked with him a little bit. He had helped me with a lot of our kettlebell training early on, and he had me doing, because we were trying to get into more grappling stuff, and I was at the time still 170 pounds, and at 6'2", that's not a very good healthy weight to be at. So I wanted to put some muscle on and build some strength. So he had me do 20 Turkish get-ups every day for a month. And if you want a great way to build some core strength, try carrying a weight up off the floor. That, at the time he told me it's a 20 kilogram kettlebell was 44 pounds, which I thought was heavy then.
Yeah. Can you describe for us what a Turkish get-up is?
So the easiest way, and if you've done any standing up and base from basically any martial art that teaches it, instead of swinging your foot straight back to the floor, you just go to a kneeling position, and then you have a weight in your hand the whole time you're getting up off the floor. So you would lay on your back, you press the weight up, and then you get up off the floor with it. So you start on your back, roll up to your elbow, up to your hand, sweep your knee back, up to kneeling, and then lunge up. It's a lot simpler than it sounds.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's just not the execution of it takes some practice. But I think the thing is if you have any type of grappling experience, it makes that movement a lot easier. I think if you have any martial arts experience, it makes any fitness stuff you do a lot easier. But I would think for actual core strength development, those two, and then the other thing, going back to if you have the tools or not, and Turkish get-ups you can do with dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells. Kettlebells are the best tool for it, but basically putting a weight over your head is the thing with it. But the other piece of equipment would be an ab wheel. So old school boxing stuff, right? Do the ab wheel rollouts. Those are going to be your top 3 core strength things that are going to teach you the proper anterior chain movement, which is going to, I guess, transfer the best. Crunches and sit-ups and things like that, they're okay to do sometimes. Leg raisers I would put in there as a close fourth, but a lot of people do them wrong, and I was doing them wrong for a long time. I always felt my back kind of clicking when I do them. I used to let my low back come off the floor a lot. Learning that hollow position really helped me keep my abs engaged a lot better. And I think that's the more important thing, is learning how to recruit the muscles at the appropriate time versus just doing stuff to make it feel like you did something. We both know, if you want to feel sore from something, I can make someone sore and out of breath by having them run wind sprints all day, but it's probably not going to benefit them very much unless their goal is just overall, like a basketball player or something like that, soccer player, overall conditioning. But it has to match what your goal is, I think, is the easiest way to put that. And I think those, the hollow positions, Turkish get-ups, and ab wheels are probably the 3, the top 3 exercises I would recommend to anyone training martial arts, especially if you're doing groundwork. Turkish get-up was actually developed about 750 years ago as a wrestling movement. So yeah, it's been in that grappling culture for a couple of years.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That takes us to my next thing. Okay, so what are some good explosion exercises?
So going back to what equipment you have, body weight, investing in some good plyometrics training. Lee Taft has a bunch of stuff he puts out. It's for athletes, but a lot of the stuff that he does is sprint mechanics and footwork drills. So he has a lot of really good stuff in that sense, and a lot of good plyometric drills, which I think between you and I, we've done a lot of the same things. So probably a lot of the drills that you're already doing with your students or anyone that trains with you are going to be good things to stick with. Broad jumps, skipping for speed, things like that to develop your foot speed. Agility ladders are good for footwork. As far as like weightlifting goes, I would say kettlebell swings are probably one of the best ways to get that like explosiveness for lower body, but then also they're great for improving conditioning too. So it's kind of like you get more than one benefit at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
For sure.
So, and sprinting can't be left out either. I would say, like, and you don't have to do a lot of sprinting, but a lot of people like doing like Olympic weightlifting and things like that. I feel the risk of doing that far outweighs the benefit personally.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Not for the sport of martial arts.
Things like that.
Yeah, like maybe like at the most, if I had like someone that was like a professional athlete, like going into like UFC or something like that, I might have them do like power cleans, maybe jerks, but I would rather have them do it with kettlebells. It's a lot safer, and it's the weight's a little. I know it seems weird. The weight's a little more unwieldy with the kettlebell, which it actually winds up improving your shoulder strength and stability. So when you do a jerk with a kettlebell, you have the weight is hanging right here. You jerk with the barbell, it's nice and spread out and balanced. So you really have to understand the movement, if that makes sense. I got to get my little guy out of this thing here real quick before we go to the next question. Once I get him out, he's going to be good. Just give me 2 seconds. Here, over here, you gotta come say hi real quick because I think Master Olds is really going to appreciate your shirt.
Hello, little sir. How are you?
Can you say hi? I don't know if you noticed his shirt.
What is that?
Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a little bit back in the day, but
yeah. I think that's the like the Master Roshi symbol or something like that. So
okay.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So going back to like the explosiveness, I think the more specific you can get with training your actual like techniques that you're working on is going to be probably your best bet. I think a lot of the explosiveness kind of falls more on the conditioning side personally. Like you would save that for like a conditioning day versus having that as like, I wouldn't rely on it solely to improve the speed or, power behind your kicks, if that makes sense. Like the best thing that you can do when it comes to that stuff is just literally continue to practice your techniques. And then like building strength and doing strength training is what helps kind of build some more power and strength with that. So that's my observation, and from just with the people that I've trained and with the people I have a friend that trains UFC fighters. He's had like 5 of his guys that are belt holders, and every time it's been like they've completely outworked the other person. They've been conditioned way better. And he does, like, you look at the stuff he does, and it's like super basic stuff he does with them. Everyone thinks that, they probably do all these complicated secret things. And it's like the main thing is martial artists that we need to do is, and this is why I got into kettlebells, is like it's injury proofing. Like my shoulders were messed up, and my back was messed up, and my hips, I was moving poorly. That's why I got into doing more of the kettlebell work over the years.
That's cool. So the next point that I wanted to ask you about is endurance. What are some exercises that you recommend for building up, that endurance?
So I'm going to go back to kettlebell swings.
Yeah.
Kettlebell snatches, which is a variation.
The cure-all for everything.
Yeah. It's not really the cure-all, but like, so I always tell people if someone like held a gun to my head and said that, you can pick like one exercise to do for the rest of your life, and that's all you can do, I'd pick the Turkish get up. If they let me pick a second one, it would be the kettlebell swing. There's actually an entire program that was written. It's like a very minimalist program. it basically, you do 100 kettlebell swings, like not all in one set, but you do like 10 sets of 10 and then 10 Turkish get-ups. And that's literally the whole program. There's been people, martial artists, police officers, athletes, where you want that like minimum effective dose of, okay, how am I going to invest my time? Because, most people think of this as like, you need to put all this time in the weight room and things like that. If you're like most people, you got family and stuff, you don't have hours and hours to go spend in the gym, right? So like maybe you need something you can do like 2 or 3 days a week in like 45 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I look at that. So I mean, obviously, training, specific training and conditioning is going to be really big. Sparring, bag sparring, doing like lots of mitt work, shadow boxing, jumping rope. Those are things that are, I think, kind of inherently built into martial arts, that need to stay there. As far as outside things go, I know like kettlebell swings, like I had mentioned, and kettlebell snatches are good exercises for that. Also sprinting, doing sprint work is good. Or even like, doing like a half hour, not even really measuring how far you run, but doing a half hour of running, like road work. Just, go outside, run 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back. Those are tried and true conditioning strategies that, we know work. But doing anything that has a high intensity for a short period of time with a long period of rest afterwards is going to be the best way you can build. I look at it as building your fuel tank, growing your fuel tank. So most people will, let's say you go out and you wanted to start an exercise program, most people just run, right? So they run like a mile today, and they try and run a mile and a half tomorrow and 2 miles the next day, and they just keep pushing through that burn. They call that glycolytic training. So like that's that buildup of all the lactic acid and everything in your muscles, and their goal is to push through that and push past that, and try and get a little bit more out of the other side of that burn. Doing sprint intervals and doing kettlebell swings is kind of the opposite, where instead of trying to push past that, all right, you're being goofy. You want to get down? Thank you. Instead of trying to just push past that all the time, the idea behind that is that what you're trying to do is you're growing your work capacity. So now, instead of having to work with the small fuel tank and like see how far you can get on your reserve, you've grown your fuel tank to the point where it takes you longer to hit your reserve, and then when you push past it, you have a lot more to tap into. So it's a strange concept.
Yeah. You said most people go for a run, but honestly, I think most people go for a walk.
It's yeah.
I mean, there
You're right.
definitely are probably better, exercises you can do than going for a run. But I mean, I think people who've never run for like, many miles in a row really should try it out, because they will show them how completely out of shape they are and how much endurance they really need to gain. And one thing that I think is even better than a run, when I was in Korea, we used to go for like 2-hour runs and stuff, and we would do like 2 hours of just nothing but paddle training. And like that's really intense. Like kick, roundhouse kick, inside pressing. You're like going up and down the floor for nothing but just 2 hours of nothing but kicks and punches, because it's basically like running, but you're using your whole body. And I can see,
absolutely.
I don't know, you have to tell me if I'm incorrect about this, but there's a lot of correlation with the kettlebell, because like with running, you're just doing this like forever.
It's a steady state
Whereas,
cardio,
when you're punching and kicking or using a kettlebell or something, you're using like your whole body, and you're kind of exhausting your whole body, which is even better, I think.
And the thing is, like, this is, everyone probably understands or has at least heard of like fast twitch versus slow twitch muscles. So like everyone's built a little bit different. Like for me, I don't have as much upper body strength. That's just not how I'm built. Like I would probably have been a great endurance athlete if I could stand the monotony of it.
Yeah.
Like
That's the
I
reason I
can't.
don't like running. It's so boring.
Yeah, it is boring. I just can't. Everyone's like, "Oh, put a book or a podcast on." I'm like, "Yeah, but then I want to like sit down and listen to it." Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. I do that while I'm driving mostly, but
Yeah.
and which is fine. I'm not saying it's bad if people are doing that, but it's just not for me. So, but like the slow twitch muscle fibers are like more of the long. They can endure that steady state of work. So it's like your postural muscles, your stabilizers, and the things that you have to use all the time just to kind of get around. The fast twitch muscle fibers are something you can kind of train your body, because there's not just two types of muscle, but we're going to overly simplify this. But like the fast twitch muscle fibers are the ones that are not only used for speed and explosiveness, but it's literally the same muscle fibers that you see people that are lifting super heavy weights off the floor. That's the same muscle fibers you're using if you're doing less than 5 repetitions of something. So like a lot of these power lifters are training like 1 to 3 repetitions of something, but they're lifting very heavy loads. And they're training that fast twitch muscle fiber. They could have also been someone that would have been very skilled at like jumping or, throwing or whatever, depending on how they're built, obviously. Like some people are just built to throw and not jump, right? And everyone's body type is a little bit different, but I kind of look at like an overall view of training is like most people kind of train that like you were saying, they go out for a walk. They kind of train at medium all the time. Like they don't have an easy day and a hard day. They do like every day is a hard day, and it kind of brings down the common denominator. So I think that's like, program design is a huge thing where like, kind of when we're talking about some of this stuff, I'm assuming most people that are going to be listening to this are not professional, athletes. Like they're not going to be going out and, competing professionally. And if they are, it's a completely different thing. Like that should be a 6 or 7 day a week deal. And you should be dedicating a minimum of 4 hours a day to it. I would say 6 or 7 would be better, but for most people that's not in the cards and it's not realistic. So a lot of this stuff is like, how do you get the biggest bang for your buck out of the time that you can invest? And I think that's really kind of just to give you an idea of where I'm like really approaching this from, more than anything.
Yeah, so, I mean, my experience training at a very high level was, after you need like at least 3 or 4 hours of hard training to get to a level of fitness, at least 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
After 4, I started to see like kind of middling returns, because you get so tired, you just don't want to stand on your feet anymore. Like, especially like I'd be training until like 12 o'clock at night, and I'm just like,
yeah.
I feel like I would do things like I'd work on my form, and I'd work on like some like lighter stuff at the like later hours of the day, but it was definitely not as beneficial. Like you see like Asian athletes, they have this elite training where they basically don't go to school. They just train 8 hours a day. They go, they like live in a dormitory with their coach, and he just coaches them. He's like 2 hours, then you eat, 2 hours, eat, then you sleep. Like you have a nap in the middle of the day, and like it's like you're like,
and that's kind of what I was talking about, like a full day, not like all in one block, right? Yeah,
absolutely. But even still, when you compare those to American athletes, I do think Asian athletes are a little bit better. But American athletes model is like you go to college, but you're also going to class, and maybe you do like 4 hours of training 5 days a week, as opposed to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And there is a little bit more, but I also think there's like this kind of degradation to your body that occurs when you're getting to like those, like that 8th hour training. So it is, I mean, but
you have to be careful with that.
But here's the thing.
The point of diminishing returns, right?
In the martial arts world, no one can train even 4 hours a day, because they can do like that kind of like, oh, I go to my school and they have 4 classes in a row, and they're like designed for like kids and families, and I just like do like 1 hour and then I stay for another hour. They can do that kind of thing, but that's not really 4 hours of hard training, in my opinion. 4 hours of hard training is very different. If you did 4 hours of hard training, you would need to be thinking a lot about like taking time to like eat big meals and sleep during the day, and like weird things that you You really would have to like have a part-time job. If anything, you really couldn't have a full-time job and train professionally. Um,
Yeah.
so that's one of the reasons why we're going to be starting up here at the school once this COVID-19 thing is over, restarting our internship program where like
Hmm.
they like work, they live at the school, they live with me, um, and they train like 8 hours a day. And you can't do that anywhere else.
Right.
Because I think in order for people to get to a high level of fitness, they have to go through that kind of a program. It's
Right. And
it's
that's like, I think we had this conversation before about like me not training MMA athletes because like it's not that I wouldn't have the skills to get someone to the point where they could at least locally compete, or have the resources where like, I obviously would bring in probably like a jujitsu coach to work with them a little bit more on grappling, but the conditioning side of it and things like that I could handle. But the problem is every person I talk to, they're like, they didn't want to put the work in that would have been needed for me to feel comfortable with them getting to that point
absolutely.
of competing. And it's like, I had this conversation with these neutral ground guys that we're in the space with, and they're kind of like the same thing. They're like, it takes, minimum of 2 years to get your blue belt with us. And if you don't have a blue belt, you're not competing with our name like at all. And even then it's like, all right, you're tournaments and combat corner and some grappling competitions, and then after you get your feet wet with that, then maybe we'll throw you into some kickboxing stuff. And they just like slowly build it. It's like 5 years before you're going to get into a competition. um,
Well, that's
you're not going to get there overnight. And you get these guys like
yeah.
BJ Penn, they're like, oh, he got his black belt in like a year. It's like the dude trained like all day every day for that and did nothing else. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't look at he got it in a year, but a year of what? Like, I
Yeah.
got my black belt pretty quick, but I was at the school like, every day, and I was running classes at blue belt, so I was there, you know,
Mm.
teaching and exercising with everyone,
Yeah.
plus our trainings we had during the day. I'd stay and I work on stuff myself,
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, you look at like time wise, maybe I got it pretty quick, but I think as far as the hours put in, I think I probably put in more hours than most people do by the time they get their black belt.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, that people don't see that aspect of it. And I think that's really important to look at, like
The
when
rigor.
you kind of look at the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Right.
It's something that, you know, when you were describing that whole thing of, neutral ground and how they prepare their fighters and how it might take 5 years for them to get to the point of actually
Right.
going out there and competing. That is
Hmm.
actually what a black belt in Taekwondo represented, like originally, uh,
Right.
and in most traditional martial arts. It meant that they weren't going to just send you out as a white belt to compete as their school. You would get annihilated and you would look terrible. Like you had to have some rudimentary understanding of, the basic kicks and punches and you would be able to perform them well.
Right.
Then you would go, and that's what a black belt symbolized, that you knew like the basics, you were like good enough to like go out and start competing. And then
Right.
you would earn your dan based on how well you competed,
Hmm.
and things
Right.
have moved a little bit away from that, but I agree with you.
Right. And
That
I think
rigor is
I
very
always
important.
explain that to my students too, is like, when you get your black belt, you're basically showing you understand the basics.
Yes.
Like, okay, good. Now you have the basics down. That took, 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But, master to me, like, I felt even more like this when I got my fourth degree, is like, okay, like, and I know I still have stuff that I'm working on, but like I really felt like by the time I got there, like I really had a solid grasp of the basics.
Mhm.
And that's the stuff I like to work on most, because anything you learn from there is like you're building off that foundation, right? And
Yeah.
that, like, kind of going back to like the fitness stuff too, like I don't like giving people these super complicated, like you can give people all this crazy complicated stuff to do, but the thing is, like, what's the overall benefit going to be? And then when you stack something on top of that, like what's their level of function going to be? Because a lot of times they're very dysfunctional. It might look like you see CrossFit athletes doing all this stuff, and like, even if you ever watch the CrossFit games, like these people that are in dead last place,
Mhm.
like that is out of like hundreds of thousands of people that have went through all their like the CrossFit Open and regionals and whatever other crap they have involved in getting into there, because they keep adding stuff because there's so many people that do it. You don't realize how good someone has to be just to suck at the CrossFit Games. Like they're, no joke, probably some of the most like elite in shape people in the world, because they're doing that, you know, training 7-8 hours a day. And, you know, it's their full-time job. Like they go home, they get 8 hours of sleep. They wake up in the morning, they go to the gym for a few hours, they eat, they go back to the gym for a few hours, they go take a nap, they go back to the gym. Like that's their life. And they have someone doing their food for them. And most people aren't ready for that level of commitment and dedication to do something like that. So, you know, but they're so good at, like, you know, they throw all these weird things at these athletes every year and try and give them this different stuff. But like the reason they can adapt to it so well is because you look at, you know, someone like, I don't know if you follow the games at all, but like Matt Frazier, who has won, I think, more times than anyone now. The guy is a beast, and he is a former junior Olympic weightlifting champion. So the reason he does so well at this stuff is he has this massively solid base in Olympic weightlifting. So of course he does really well at a lot of these things. He had to work on his conditioning for his running, but that was an easy fix for him, you know? So that's kind of like I think any of this stuff, you want to take a holistic approach to it and like kind of, you know, step back and see like what your goals really are, and then start building off that foundation to really make sure that whatever effort you're putting in isn't wasted.
No, for sure. Like you also have to say like, well, what are you trying to accomplish with your life? You know,
right.
You want to be like a CrossFit like competitor, because if you want to do that, you're not going to be a top martial artist. Like they're very different. Like there's going to be some overlap, but it's like with me, like, you know, competing in Taekwondo, there was a decision I had to make. Like, do I become a really good self-defense martial artist and learn all these pieces and everything like that? Or do I just compete in Olympic style Taekwondo? Because if I want to do that, I got to focus on those specific kicks and punches that work in that playing field.
Right.
And the same thing.
Not accidentally punch someone in the face.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's always these decisions we have to make, how to spend our time. Okay,
absolutely.
One last question I wanted to ask you. I actually had a bunch, but we've gone a long time already. So I'm going to skip over everything.
I feel like we could like talk all day about this stuff though too.
Absolutely.
We'll have to do a 2.0.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on and we'll talk more about this. Nutrition. If you could just say one thing, give my students one piece of advice about nutrition, what would it be?
Okay, this is kind of a pretty easy one. So like eat whole foods, mostly vegetables, and not too much. That sums up my nutrition strategy. So like if you had to go out and farm or hunt down the food, I'm not saying like the paleo diet was the thing to do, because I know that was like their thing, is like, you know, a hunter-gatherer type of mentality. But like if you couldn't grow it, prepare it yourself, or go out and kill it yourself and prepare it, you probably shouldn't be putting it on your plate. You know, if it came from a plant, it's probably not good for you. But if it was grown as a plant, you probably are okay with that, right? Your body knows how to process that stuff.
Is there some theory behind it requiring more energy for your body to break it down, and thus you'll get less calories out of it? Because like
so kind of, I mean,
can I just say one thing before you go? You go. So like I was learning a lot about how fire was really important to our development as human beings, and like one reason why fire was so important is not only did it kill the germs, but it also broke down the food and made it easier for us to process, so we could like consume lots of calories, and that was really useful back in the day.
Right.
Not so useful now. You know, when everything's like super processed, it's like just direct calories into your body.
Yeah.
You know?
You could almost like the coffee and just do an IV, right? So yeah, I guess like kind of two things along that point. I hope I remember the second one, but like going back to the like you were saying, like it takes more to break things down like that. So there's this thing called the thermic effect of food, which is basically the easiest way to sum this up is, let's say I gave you a 100-calorie pixie stick and you ate that. That is instantly in your body. Like that sugar, before it even gets to your stomach, your body's absorbed already. It's the most efficient way for your body to get those carbohydrates, which a lot of that stuff, yes, you know, fruit has carbohydrates and sugars, but it's a little bit different. So even if you would eat like an apple, for example, right? And let's say, you know, for the sake of argument, the apple is 100 calories.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bite the apple, you have to chew it. So you're using your jaw, right, and the muscles in your mouth to chew that. Then you have to swallow it, and you have to digest it, and it has to go through your whole digestive tract and slowly break down and separate the sugar from the fiber that's in the apple, and you know, separate all the nutrients that are in there and break them down and send them to the places in your body that needs that particular nutrition. So there's a lot more going on than just this instant energy. So, you know, a lot of that's been processed. Kind of the second component to that, as far as like, you know, fire and or just like cooking food, you know, there's things where like you get different components out of food if you prepare them different ways. So if you take like blueberries, for example, and you freeze them, and then you put them in like a smoothie and blend them up, or you know, you even throw them in your yogurt, you're going to get some different benefits out of the blueberries than if you would have just like chewed on them and like, you know, eaten them, because basically they're what's happening is that the fiber is kind of broken down a little bit more from being frozen. You know, it'd be the same thing if you took them and like heated them up and like, you know, I don't know why you'd saute blueberries, but if you sauteed them, the same kind of thing would happen. Like, you know, if you eat raw broccoli versus steamed versus, you know, baked or, you know, whatever. So there's different components of the nutrition that's going to, you know, kind of be more readily available to you, because you're not going to always be able to use all of the protein or all of the, you know, carbohydrates or all of the fiber that's in there, because not everything in there is meant for us to process. Like there's basically like 9 building blocks, the amino acids that we need as human beings for protein. But like in vegetables, there's a lot, and, you know, even meats and stuff, there's a lot of other components of protein that we just don't use. And it's not bad for you, but it's just, there's a lot of different components to this stuff that, I guess the best way to put it is like, you know, you have to, you know, find foods that are, you know, like I said, kind of going back to the whole foods thing again, like, you know, things that our ancestors would have eaten are going to be the best options. You know, so like Taco Bell probably wasn't around in, you know, the 1600s or something like that, or even before that. So,
I think if I was going to give advice to somebody, like the thing that was the most eye-opening to me is count the calories that you're consuming. Like, I don't think most people have any idea about how much calories are in something. Like, you go to McDonald's and you get like a hamburger, like a Whopper, and like a large fry and a drink. That's like almost all the calories you should be eating for the entire day. People have like no concept of how many calories they're consuming and how many you should consume. I think like,
and they'll do a shake and other stuff with that too. Yeah.
It's like you should, and they think, oh, well, that's just one meal. So if you ate 3 of those meals a day, you would be massive. Like
but people do.
And people do it. Yeah. All the time. And they say, oh, it's because of like some obscure little, like, you know, fad diet thing. And I'm like, okay, that stuff might be important, but let's first talk about the calories, because it's like grammar with English. I was an English major, and it's like before you can start talking about, you know, like higher levels of, you know, sentence structure and theory and stuff like that, you first need to understand like how do you like put together a sentence, you know, and make it not be a run-on sentence or comma splice or whatever. And sorry about that.
Yep. Oh, that's right.
Okay, so yeah, I just think like first knowing how many calories you should be consuming and how many calories are in what you're eating is really important.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of people struggle with the like. I recommend people to get MyFitnessPal, and then you can literally like scan your food and punch it in.
Yeah.
People struggle with that a lot, and so like quantity of food is going to determine your scale weight. So like if you're eating like, you know, let's say 3,000 calories a day, that's going to be more of a determining factor of how much you weigh. But then the quality of the food that you're eating. So if you're eating like mostly whole foods, you know, mostly vegetables, things like that, most people are, you know, pretty intuitive as to like what to actually eat. So like a really simple thing, they have a guide on like how to use your hand for like a kind of a food scale, because it can be really stressful for a lot of people to count and track calories. And like easy thing to do, like the size and thickness of your palm should be your protein serving for your meal. That's about like 20 to 30 grams. 2 cupped handfuls, like, you know, so you go like this and fill your hands up. That should be your carbohydrate serving for the meal, and then like your 2 thumbs like that is your fat. And if you're doing like a vegetarian, protein serving is about the size of your fist. So it's pretty simple to kind of eye it up. And then you fill the rest of your plate in with veggies.
I
So,
like it. I like it. That's a great ending note for that. Okay, I have one last question, and then I'm going to let you go. You know, in the last like 20 years, I've seen a lot of training implements become trendy. You see like medicine balls, like picking them up and slamming them on the ground, tires, these ropes and stuff that people love to use. And then you see kettlebells, right? And all of it has one common denominator. They're like super badass things to do. I used to get these Russian bags where you like sling them around and stuff. Like those are
really we got some of those things. And
so here's my question. Are kettlebells just like dumbbells but more badass, or are they superior in some way?
So okay, so they're different. The thing is, like, I prefer kettlebells because, you know, they're slightly more badass, but just a little bit. That being said, like, you have to pick the right tool for the job. So if, let's say for example, you're you know, you're a bodybuilder and you just want to put on muscle, kettlebell is not going to be the tool for you. It's not the thing that you want to go with. You want to go with dumbbells and barbells. That's going to be your best, you know, simplest thing. As far as like an overall training tool, I think the kettlebell is superior because you can have like 3, maybe 4 kettlebells and keep yourself busy your entire life and continue to improve your conditioning and strength, just by having a couple sizes of them. So that's why I think they're really superior. It's just kind of, you know, the amount of stuff that you can do with them is, you know, kind of vastly I'm trying to think of how to, superior to, like, you know, there's barbells have restrictions, dumbbells have restrictions. That's what you can do. And obviously kettlebells do as well, but not really as many. You can build muscle with kettlebells. It's just, they're not as easy to build muscle with. And it really sucks to do a muscle building program with just kettlebells because it's just, it winds up being super brutal. I've done it before.
Gotcha.
Man, it sucks. So yeah, I think that would be probably the best answer to the question is just they're definitely more versatile. I can go on a road trip somewhere and I take one kettlebell with me. I have my whole gym with me while I'm going. I have kettlebells that have traveled all over the country with me. You know, been to Colorado and, you know, Michigan and, you know, Pennsylvania, all over the place. So it's nice to have it and just say, all right, now I can get my training and I'm not missing anything. And it takes up like that much room. So,
cool.
Yeah.
What is the typical weights that you like usually move?
For me, it depends on what I'm doing. They're in kilograms. So like the 24 kilograms is the one I think I use the most. It's about 53 pounds.
Yeah.
So
you use that with 2 hands or just 1 hand?
Both. It depends on what you're doing with it. Like, you know, swings are like a 2-handed deal.
Before dumbbell? Dude, it's a beast.
So a lot of the stuff you do is like a little bit more ballistic, or like, like pressing like this, so we'll do, presses with it. It's a little bit different feel to the weight too. I do have some stuff I go heavier with, but really it's a pretty good weight for like generally keeping myself in fighting shape, I would suppose, because it's not so heavy that I'm going to injure myself. I can kind of, play around with it a little bit. Some of the heavier weights that I use, like right now, I have a goal of getting my half body weight press. So I'm using like 32 kilogram and 36 kilogram bells. So about like 70, 80 ish pounds, right around there, to try and get up to 40 kilograms, which is, I think, like 88, 90 pounds. They all weigh a little bit different. It's cast iron, so they don't all weigh exactly the same. They say what they weigh on the side, but if you put it on a scale, they're usually a little bit different. So yeah.
So what kind of bowling ball are you using? Like 20 pounds?
I don't go bowling, but I think a 20 or 30 pound ball wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
But no, we do have some heavier ones. I have one that's like 123 pounds that we'll do swings with on occasion, but more for like generating power than anything. It's like just doing like 5. We're not doing tons of swings with it. But yeah, for like general conditioning and stuff, you don't have to go super heavy. It's more of like how you execute it than the weight to a point. For most women, we're usually having them use between like 8 to 20 kilogram kettlebells for most stuff. Guys are usually, depending on their age, like kind of 14 to 28 or 32 kilogram bells. So there's like kind of a range of weights that people will use, but every once in a while we like to kind of push beyond that a little bit too. So,
well, Master Green, it's great to have you on. We're going to have you back on again. There's a lot of
absolutely
to ask you. I barely got through my list of things I wanted to talk to you about.
That's how that always goes, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
But awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck in these difficult times at your school. And talk to you later.
You as well. Sounds good.